It. Hey, everybody. Good, as Jill said, good morning, good afternoon. We really appreciate everyone joining us today for sort of a new activity that we're doing here with this broadband banter and LinkedIn Live activity. So I'm really happy to be joined by Christina today as well. We'll let her introduce herself in just a moment. Just to introduce myself, for those maybe who don't know me, my name is Gabe Peterson. I'm the field strategy lead here at Calix for our Calix Engagement Cloud and our smart home solutions. I've had the pleasure of working with Christina for quite a while, and I'll hand it over to Christina to introduce herself.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Christina. I am a customer success specialist here at Calix, specifically working with Engagement Cloud and all the lovely integrations we have. And I've been working with Gabe for quite a while here at Calix, but also I guess you could say in my previous life doing marketing at a provider.
Yes, yeah, Christina is underselling herself a bit. So, she's had we've known each other for probably 5 years now, Christina, something like
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
And I had the pleasure of working with her when she was working for a provider as their marketing director. And she's actually the one who shared with me a lot of what we're going to go through today around the ISP toolbox and some great resources that we believe can help broadband providers be a lot more efficient with the investments that they're making from a social media perspective. And as the title of the episode here that we're talking about, how to really make those budget dollars go farther, even if you may have a relatively limited budget and you want to get your marketing message out to a really specific group of people. So Christina was a huge resource for me in understanding how to do this better. And I know she's going to be able to provide some great context around, how to help other marketers at broadband service providers be more effective with those limited budgets. So really happy to have her on here as well today.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to really quickly talk kind of why digital marketing and why we think that really leaning into digital is important from just to be as cost effective as possible with the investments that you're making within your marketing budgets. So just the high level points here, it's an extremely cost effective way to get messaging out to a very specific group of people. And we'll see that here in a few minutes when we start talking about the ISP toolbox, specifically how you can do very targeted ads geographically as well as at specific locations. So by being able to target a very specific group of people who can get your broadband service, that makes those dollars go a lot farther. That's one of the biggest challenges. And Christina, maybe you could talk to this just for a moment, but one of the biggest challenges I've always heard from broadband service providers is I want to market my service, but if I'm a WISP or if I'm a fiber provider or any type of provider, I can only serve really specific locations. And I don't want my message going out more broadly because for some reason, nothing makes people madder than seeing ads for something that they actually can't buy. I've just continued to see that over the years. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, there can be so much frustration. I think specifically going back to WISP. So if you have a tower in a town, depending on what kind of equipment you have, you may be only reaching, 4 to maybe 8 miles circumference. So a lot of digital marketing tools only let you do the whole zip code. So that can add a lot of frustration and a lot of wasted dollars. So I'm excited to talk about this tool to help you narrow in everything.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? I love that specific problem of I can target a specific city or town, or I can target an entire zip code, but most of the time, broadband providers aren't serving that entire area. So being able to use some of the tools that we're going to talk about today allow you to be a lot more thoughtful around the geographic targeting that you would be building. And this also allows you to, because the investments that you're making are quite small, sometimes 50 or maybe $100, can allow you to actually get some marketing out into the world and test and see what's going on. And that's the beauty to me of digital marketing and specifically marketing on social is you can easily get those results to track the campaign effectiveness, and you can test different messages, test different imagery, test different locations, see what's resonating with your customers, and then turn that back into adjustments that you're making within your marketing campaigns and structure to make sure that you're investing those dollars as effectively as you can. And again, we were talking about relatively small numbers, where you can, really throw 50 or $100 at a campaign and start to see some results.
Yeah, it can go a long way.
for sure. So the tool that we're going to talk about specifically today, and we're actually going to jump over here in a minute and actually and really start to dig into the tool itself, but it's a resource called the ISP Toolbox, and it was built by Facebook. And Christina, as I said, you were the one who actually shared this with me when you and I worked together in our kind of prior lives when I was in success, and you were actually at a BSP. So would you mind sharing just a little bit about kind of the history here and what you were able to do with the tool?
Yeah, so this tool was a special project specifically geared towards WISPs. So exactly what we're talking about, problem needing to be solved of how do we effectively market to areas that we can provide service to, and getting the most out of our dollar. So it's not necessarily built into Facebook. There is a special link that you have to go to actually access this. But there are a variety of tools that I think are helpful for a lot of marketers. Anything from doing Facebook ads, or if you're thinking about going into a market and your engineering team wants some support, a little background beyond looking at leads, there are a couple variety of different options in here to help you see what that market looks like before you make that decision on expansion or not.
Yeah, I know we wanted to spend the majority of our time today talking about the marketing bit of this, but I'm very much in agreement with you there, Christina, that there are some other really great tools within the resource here. And I believe now this is completely open, correct? It used to be that you
Yep.
had to join a specific group, Facebook group, and then they would provide you access. But this has been completely open source and is now totally open. Yes.
Yep. 100%.
Okay. I do want to add one caveat for any folks who may be listening to this outside of the US. This is a US based tool, so it isn't something that's available broadly across the entire world. It is something that is limited to the United States. So just do keep that in mind. We will talk through some other ways that we see customers being more effective with the budgeting dollars that they're using, even without tools like this. But this is certainly this is a tool that's only available in the US, and we see as being really helpful to solve some of those specific problems that Christina was talking about. Just to walk through kind of the top section here really quick, and then we'll jump into the marketing tools portion of this. But there is the under business tools, there is that ROI estimator as well as the market evaluator. The ROI estimator is pretty interesting. You can start to enter some of these high level numbers around what the overall cost structure would be for your business. And then you start to see when you actually would make money based on estimated take rates. Christina, did you use this? Were you using this one much when you were like evaluating new markets? I realize that was a bit out of your purview, but just curious as to if you
No,
were
not
using
too
this one.
much. Nope. I
Yeah.
used some of the other two that we'll dive into.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, the market evaluator one is really interesting. And this is one where this is popping up in San Jose, and I'll just draw a coverage area here. And as I'm drawing this, maybe this is the area that I want to serve. And what I'll start to see here is some information about that specific location. It sounds like this is one you were maybe leaning into a little bit more just to understand what at least at a high level, population was and things like that.
Yep. And I love the part with the service providers, saves you a little
Yeah.
time there.
That's a great call out. This is I love that bit as well. This service providers, and you can actually click on it and view the list. So if I were a broadband service provider, I probably would avoid this market as there are 12
There's
providers
a
already
bunch,
here.
yeah.
There's a lot of folks that are already in that particular location. So that may not necessarily be an area that I'm going to see a lot of success in. And if I click on this, I can actually start to see what some of the details are. So we've got Comcast, we've got AT&T, we've got Cruzio, some different providers there as well. And you can start to see all of the different options as well as the different speeds. And that I think is a huge part there, Christina, to
Mhm.
understand what the competitive landscape is going to be based on the providers that are already in that area.
Yep, 100%.
And you'll see this in multiple places in the ISP toolbox, but there's a couple of different ways to look at this information. You've got the ability to draw a coverage map, just like I did there. For folks who are more in the WISP space, you also have the ability to place an access point, and then you can start to drag in or out the coverage area for that particular access point. And then if I click onto that area, all of this information then updates to that data versus the data in this other location over here. And we can see here that there's actually only 6 providers here. So this is maybe a little bit more of a rural area as we start to get into the foothills. Well, rural for San Jose, but we start to see some less providers, less competition than we did in the kind of city proper there. And then the upload piece of this actually allows you to upload a KML or KMZ shape file. So if you have a shape file that tells you maybe fiber routes or something like that, you can actually upload this directly into the tool. So you can really see in a visual, where are those areas that I actually can serve with fiber. Anything else, Christina, you would mention here on
I don't think
this
so.
market evaluator? Okay.
Nope, I think you covered it all. And it's just nice to kind of play with the different market penetration percents too, based on, historically what's right for your business to kind of get an estimation on potential
Uh,
leads
I
too.
love that. That's a great call out. Yeah, this potential market penetration here, you can, adjust those percentages, see what the potential leads would be based on the buildings that are inside that specific coverage area. So, yeah, hopefully you have a pretty good understanding of what your historical take rates have been as you've gone into new markets, and you can start to, understand what the potential market penetration and potential leads there are. And then even go back, use that information to go back and start to build the business case in a little bit more detail based on the information that's in the market evaluator. So the next one here is the LiDAR line of sight. And this is one that I'm going to lean on you, Christina, because it starts to get out of my purview quickly. But would you mind explaining this one just a little bit around, how this was critical, especially for the WISP space where, line of sight becomes a bit more important versus, something like fiber or other technologies that people would be using.
Yep. So this one is more geared in the toolbox towards an engineering team rather than the marketer. But this kind of gives you an estimation on who can get service and maybe even the quality from the location of the tower or access point. For WISPs, it's very important to know maybe what some of the obstructions could be within the way. So anything that's, earth, so trees, hills, rocks, all that fun stuff can maybe pose interference if a potential subscriber can get service or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's as you said, this is definitely geared towards more of the, engineering technical folks as
Mhm.
it quickly gets out of my purview. But,
Yep.
being able to just quickly see that and draw on the map to understand are there going to be specific issues here, and quickly be able to do that without having to actually send somebody out into the field to check, hey, is there a giant tree that's going to
Mhm.
cause line of sight problems? Certainly a time saver and a cost saver from that perspective too.
Yep, especially when you're looking at maybe erecting a tower.
Mm,
Um, it's hard to get up to the top just to see if it's, a good fit and what obstructions could be there. So,
yeah, for sure. All right. Well, the area that we definitely wanted to spend the majority of our time on today was the service area ads under the marketing tools. So this is really where you can start to get specific geographic targeted ads that will allow you to be very thoughtful around where the areas that you actually can serve and make sure that we're marketing to the people in those areas. So Christina, if you could just give us kind of an overview of what we're seeing here, and then we can kind of play around with a couple of real world scenarios to show folks how this would actually work.
yep, this is my favorite tool in the toolbox. So this helps you create a more granular segment for your Facebook ad. So you'll log in and it'll automatically connect to your Facebook ad account. And you can see, as Gabe's doing on the map, you can draw a shape over a specific coverage area. You also have the availability to exclude a portion of the shape as well if you don't want that section included within your ad. A few other options here too. You can place an access point. So if you know where specific parts are, that's a good option. My preferred option personally was uploading a file, which is for the KMZ or KML option. And a lot of times I would work with my engineering department to have them help produce that list for me. So that's more granular on the fact that it would be, exact list of houses that could get service.
Yeah.
So yeah, And once you are good with your shape or your list or your access point, you will make sure you select the right ad account on the left-hand side. You can name the audience as well. And you have the opportunity to put in a description as well. So you can remember what the audience consisted of.
Yeah, I think
Um,
from a best practice perspective, I would definitely always recommend
mhm.
putting in some additional details here on the description, especially when you're doing this type, this one's a little bit insane. I was just sort of clicking around just to show what this looks like, but it starts to get, fairly detailed around the specific geographic areas that you're looking to market to or not market to. So best practice, definitely recommend adding in a description and potentially even being really thoughtful about the naming conventions that you're using from an audience name perspective. One of the things that we see, Christina, I think you and I see a lot, is that people do start to get a large number of custom audiences within
Mhm.
their Facebook ads manager. And it can be a little bit unwieldy sometimes to remember what exactly it was that you've done when you've got 100 custom audiences that are set up. So be
Yep.
thoughtful about the audience name as well as the description. And one thing Christina mentioned, I just wanted to go back to. So this does require a Facebook Ads Manager account. So you do have to set that up. It's a fairly straightforward process to get that set up. And we actually have a ton of resources around, kind of how to set that up. Meta or Facebook also has tons of great resources to set that up. Also, we have some resources on our community that are a bit more geared towards the telecommunications industry specifically. So if you're looking for steps on how to make that happen, please check out our community. We have lots of resources on how to make that happen. I did want to talk through, Christina, something around audiences and the geographic bit, and something that changed somewhat recently, based on people kind of moving in and out of these spaces. Would you mind
Yep.
talking through that a little bit, because there's some nuance there, and I just want to make sure that people understand that.
Yep. So previously, whenever running a Facebook ad, with your audience, you could have different types. So last up until last May, you could target to people within a certain area that specifically lived in the area or recently visited the area. It could be one or the other, but they've made some changes now just across the board. So now everyone in that little bubble there, it's going to be anyone that's recently visited the area. So a little bit of a difference there. But still, if it's a neighborhood, they're probably coming and going to their house. So it won't be too crazy of outside of that bounds of reaching who you're trying to target.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, there's certainly risk, right, that you're potentially, advertising to somebody who maybe doesn't live exactly in that location, but the risk is relatively low. And, unfortunately, with any marketing, we know it's never going to be exactly perfect. So, but I think that caveat is really important to understand, that if, this is a downtown area and people are kind of moving in it, moving in and out of the space, there may be some folks who actually see the ads when they're in this area, but they live out here and they can't necessarily get that service. So we did just want to add that caveat. But from a targeting perspective, we're really able to get a lot more targeted with something like this versus what we would have been able to do before. Historically, like Healdsburg, which is the town that I live in, this is one zip code. So we would have just been able to either do the town or the entire zip code. And if I zoom out a little bit, that would have included basically this entire area here. And if I'm a provider who's, maybe just putting up a couple of towers in the center of town and I just want to cover these more populated areas, or maybe I'm a fiber provider and I'm just building to a certain area of town, that's something where I would have had a lot of waste because I would have been marketing to a whole bunch of people that cannot get my service. So whether
Mhm.
that's, again, uploading that KML or KMZ shapefile, to be very specific about who you can market to, or drawing out some fun circles and polygons and all this great stuff like I've done here. Lots of different ways to get to that approach. But there's, Christine, I didn't prep this question, so I'll just put you on the spot. But I live in a town. There's about 11,000 or 12,000 households in this town. If I were a provider who is trying to market to 2 or 3 thousand homes in a particular location, and I wanted to run an ad for a month, what's a reasonable budget that you would say I would need in order to get a decent amount of a decent amount of ads out in front of those folks.
I think honestly, you'd be fine at $100. I mean, it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be anything crazy. And I think even that is kind of on the high end.
Hmm.
I've seen some BSPs be um, okay with $50 too. So it doesn't
Yep.
have to be anything wild, and you can test it.
Perfect. I'm glad you said that because I kind of had that number in my head as well, in that kind of, $100 range. And I think that's one of the reasons Christine and I love this tool so much is because you can be really thoughtful about who it is that you're targeting so you don't have to spend huge amounts of money. We know, there's lots of other tactics that work very effectively. Direct mail can still be a very effective tactic. Sending door knockers into neighborhoods can be a very effective tactic. These are very high cost solutions to a problem. If you're just looking to gather a little bit of interest or understand if there's interest in running, rolling out service into a particular area, throw 100 or a couple $100 at it, see what kind of feedback you get, and you're going to start to understand pretty quickly if there's an actual addressable market here. So when we talk about not breaking the bank and being really thoughtful about the investments that you're making, this is where we can, I think, really be effective with the investments that we are making by leveraging tools like this, building out these particular areas that we want to target or exclude, and then, start to go kick off some ads and actually push these over.
Yep. Great way to test too. I've seen some providers use this tool to even just gauge pre-interest before even building out. So $100 is not much in the grand scheme of things to test what demand can look like.
Could you tell us, Christina, maybe just a couple of examples of how you'd actually use this in prior life, specific
Hmm.
campaigns? I knew you talked about lead campaigns a little bit. I'd love to hear a bit more about that, but just in general, how you were able to use this tool in your prior life when you were running marketing for a WISP.
Yep. So a couple different ways, but if there's a specific area that you are looking to maybe grow acquisition that you currently service, that could be a great option because not only can you pull this list, you can also go into Facebook and exclude a list of current customers. So we make sure we're not hitting them as well. So that would be one example. And we could hit them with maybe a traffic objective ad, which would lead them towards a maybe specific landing page for your campaign goals. I've also seen recently a lot of providers prefer the method of using a lead objective
Mm-hmm.
um, for gauging interest, pre-signups, or growing acquisition as well. Um, the lead objective is interesting because it doesn't go through whatever traditional funnel you have within your business. It will collect a list within Facebook. So you will have to go in there and audit and see what comes through, and then contact them, push it out into your traditional business, flow that way. But the lead one, I've seen really, really good results with that lately. So if you offer fiber, I've seen it zone based. If you
Mm-hmm.
are a WISP, I've seen it tower based. So there are a lot of options without too much spend.
Yeah.
I've even seen anywhere from, spending 75 to $100 and seeing upwards of 1,000 lead, or not 1,000, 100 lead forms, which is still great. So it's, about $1 a lead. I don't think you can beat that.
No, pretty hard to beat that. And when we're talking about what we're talking about here around ad creation, when you actually go to create the ad, this is where you would want to choose those objectives. So what is it that you actually want to do? Do I want to just drive traffic back to a landing page that, has people fill out a form? I think the really nice part about the lead bit, and I'm really glad you called that out, Christina, is it's gathering the lead in Facebook directly. So it's minimizing the amount of energy
Yep.
that somebody has to expend in order to express interest in your service. And we know people are lazy, right? If we ask them to
Hmm.
click on three things, they're probably not going to
They're
do it. If we
done.
ask them exactly.
Yep.
Whereas if we ask them to click on one thing and provide that information directly within a lead form, that's something that's going to likely see a lot more uptake because it's just lower friction, right? They're actually able to do that regardless, and that's something that is broadly available. So
Yep.
whether you're in the U.S., outside of the U.S., whatever, that lead campaign objective is something that's broadly available across the Meta advertising platform. So definitely something we would encourage you to look at is, let me actually just start running some lead ads versus traffic ads. I would say, oh good, I would say probably 98% of the ads that we see people running are traffic ads,
Yep.
just in from my experience, Christina. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to experiment with things like you said with lead ads, and I know you had quite a bit of success with that when you were in your prior role.
Yep. I think, yeah, they're both great. Leads, I think, are becoming a little more popular, but traffic's great too because then you can create a custom landing page to go with your campaign and have a little bit of better tracking.
Mm-hmm.
But lots of good options. So,
Yeah, that's a really good point on the tracking piece. That is one where when you're running traffic ads, you can obviously set up unique UTMs and things like that to be able to understand, how many people are actually clicking through to this. Obviously, you get some click-through stats and things like that in Facebook. Also, Facebook ads reporting is something that I think gets slept on a lot. Under the kind of main Facebook ads manager, there is ads reporting. That's where you'll start to get a really good idea of where people what ads people are clicking on, what placements. So are they coming from Instagram, are they coming from Facebook, are they coming from stories, are they coming from the feed, are they coming from video, whatever. Meta has, I don't even know, probably 25 or 30 different things that they can place your ads across. And if you want to get a better understanding of what's actually driving traffic, you can get in here under ads reporting and start to get a much clearer understanding of that. So don't sleep on the ads reporting piece. Certainly, from an investment perspective, we're still talking relatively small investments, but just because it's a small investment doesn't mean we want to ignore the results, because that's what's going to allow us to understand, is this a place where I should really be doubling down my efforts?
yep, totally agree. We don't want to have all of our ads only appear in Marketplace if they're not doing anything for us. So,
Yeah, the click-through rates there are usually not so great.
yeah.
I wanted to go back to something else you said just a moment ago, and it was a really important point, and I want to make sure it doesn't get lost, and that's exclusions.
Mm,
And that is something that we would always recommend as a best practice is that you have a custom audience always set up of your current customers. And anytime you are running ads, make sure that you are using an exclusion audience to exclude those current customers. Not that we don't love our current customers, but they're not going to buy. They've already bought the service from you. So we want to make sure that we're not wasting our dollars marketing to people who already have our service. That's another area where I think there's a lot of opportunity to make your budget dollars go farther and
yep.
target them at specific groups of people, is to always, always, always make sure that you are excluding your existing customers. And it's very easy to do. All you have to do is just upload an audience here of your existing subscribers into custom audiences. And then when you're building your ad, you simply just exclude that specific audience. So we would build our audience over here based on geographic targeting. There's going to be maybe some people who are signed up for our services, and there's going to be maybe some people who aren't. And then when we're actually creating the ad, we just need to make sure that we're excluding that specific audience. So, Christina, I thought that was a really good point. I want to make sure it didn't get lost, especially as we're talking about how to be more thoughtful about the investments that we're making.
Yep. Thank you. It's something easy to do too. So, a lot of people tend to forget about it. So, I'm glad you brought that up.
It's like 2 clicks, I mean,
Hmm.
once you've done
Yeah.
the audience, once you've actually uploaded the audience, which is pretty much just a couple of clicks or maybe
Hmm.
5 clicks or something, but it's not insane.
Yep.
It's very, to your point, it's very easy to do.
And that's not even fancy with, KMZ shape files. You just take a CSV, old fashioned, and upload and call it a day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll just pull this up. I mean, it's basically, you can click on here on your customer list, you click next, it'll actually give you the exact template that you need to upload. Click on download file template and you're off and running, right? I mean, there's a
Mhm.
couple of things you got to do here, but for the most part, it's very, very, very straightforward. And as you said, and then when you actually go to create the ad, it's really just a couple of clicks to make sure to exclude. So something very straightforward and makes those budget dollars go farther. I mentioned community resources earlier. I did just want to mention also we do have a Broadband Banter page that we have set up that has a lot of resources on it as well. We're continuing to build out. These are resources that actually walk through how to create an ad, kind of a reminder around some of the ISP toolbox resources here as well. So they're short videos that kind of walk through some of these resources. So if you forget anything that we talked about today, not that anybody ever would, but there's those resources to remind you around those specific things.
I did want to
Christina,
hop into one more thing.
yeah,
Um,
please. Where do you want me to
so
go?
I did hop into our pretend ISP toolbox account earlier and I sent over an audience. I
Hmm.
wanted everyone to see what it would look like once it populates. So April 17th is the one I sent over, but you kind of have to activate it. So if you see in the middle column where it says availability, not available, we're going to have to go into that actual custom audience. Yep. And if you click under actions in the top right and then edit. Okay. Now, if you see under that the red box, there's the drop down that says people living in this location.
Hmm.
If you click that and just update it, yep.
Uh,
So
yep.
that
People
is
living here
because of the
recently.
change in
Yep.
May that we talked about. So once you change that and then press update in the bottom right hand corner,
I gotta move
you'll
I
be
gotta move our
good to
lovely
go.
faces out of the way. But yes, and click update right there. So
Yep.
that's a really good call out. Thank you, Christina, for mentioning that.
Yep.
Because yeah, that's due to change, that change in May that Christina was talking about, where changed how audiences are done. So and now we see that availability is ready.
Yep. Then you can make an ad with that.
Yep. And then from there, when we click on actions, we should see create ad. And eventually we'll probably see create lookalike too, although I think that takes a little bit longer to populate. But we could now just click on create ad. That's something else I will mention just from a time savings perspective. I would highly recommend that anytime you are creating an ad off of a custom audience, just go to the audience list, click on actions, and click create ad. It will make your life a little bit easier as you're going through and actually doing the audience creation. It's just a few less clicks when you're actually creating the ad. So if you're creating that ad again off of a custom audience, do it directly here from the action screen.
Good call out.
I feel like we need to do another one of these, Christina, on lookalikes, because you and I have
Yeah.
had a lot of conversations about that over the years.
Yep.
So maybe
All the
that's one of our
time.
future topics.
Yep. Love it. Add it to the list.
Yes, indeed. I should have put that on the list. Speaking of the list, so let me jump back here. Jill, I know we had a couple of things. If there's any questions, I know Jill mentioned this, but please feel free to drop them into into the Q&A box. Christine and I will do our best to answer any of those questions as we kind of wrap things up here. Christine, anything you feel like we missed? I think we hit the
I
key
think
stuff.
we
Yeah.
got it. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So a couple of polls here. Jill, did I just see that you dropped
Yep.
the link to the, okay,
Yes.
awesome. And then the last one here, just on on the general questions, is what other topics would you be interested in discussing in future sessions? So Christina and I get the pleasure of talking to broadband service providers all day, every day. And we want to make sure that the content that we're bringing to the table as part of Broadband Banter and just content that we're creating in general is helpful for you all and helpful to drive your businesses forward. So if there are specific topics that you'd like to hear about, we have 4 options here. Please feel free to hit us up on LinkedIn or whatever. Also, if you want to hear about other specific topics, feel free to reach out to us anytime. And we want to make sure that as we're creating these in the future, that it's relevant for the jobs that you all are doing every day. Jill, any questions, or Susan, any questions that we didn't address?
No, there aren't any questions in the LinkedIn queue.
Look at that. Everybody
We
understood
got
it
all of
perfectly.
them. Yeah.
That's lovely.
Oh, I actually do see one here that came in just directly. So, um, how someone is wondering how much money is a reasonable amount to spend for social media marketing, and should BSPs be outsourcing this function, hire someone, or figure it out themselves?
It's a good question.
That's a good
There's a
question. There's
lot.
a
There's a
lot.
lot
Yeah.
to unpack there. Christina, I'll let you go and then
Oh
I'll
man.
top up anything.
I think if you're getting started, it's important to do testing to understand what works for you and your market. Start small. It could even be 25 bucks here and there. Work your way up to 100. Um, as far as outsourcing, I mean, I feel like it also depends on your bandwidth, right? I know a lot of marketers at BSPs wear a lot of hats. So I know time can be limited. So something to think about there. And then also how many ads and where do you want them to run as you get into more acquisition goals with funding and expansion and all that stuff. So I don't say I have a perfect answer. I think there's a lot of different facets that can fall into that. What do you think, Gabe?
Yeah, I think I mean, I hate to do it depends, but it
Yeah.
sort of depends. It's if you're looking at targeting a specific area with, a few thousand households or something like that, I think the numbers that Christina and I threw out on a monthly basis are probably pretty reasonable. You could probably spend a couple $1,000s a year in total and, have a whole bunch of campaigns running all the time that would get your marketing in front of your prospects on a very, very regular basis. So I think you can be, at that relatively nominal investment level. As to the outsource piece, I agree with Christina. We certainly see a lot of folks wearing multiple hats, or just limited resources within companies. So as sometimes looking to outsource that would make good sense. The other thing I'll just add on the outsourcing bit is there there are a lot of changes that happen to Meta Ads Manager on a regular basis. So, it is something that requires some effort to keep up on. Once you learn it and kind of have that baseline, then, you got a really good foundation to build from. But there are changes like some of the stuff that Christina talked about around, changes in how audiences are targeted from a geographic perspective, whether they're living in the area or just visiting the area. Those are subtle things that, unless you're in it on a really regular basis, you might not necessarily see. So that could be a reason that you'd want to bring in some additional expertise to help you understand that stuff a little bit better.
Yep. And no matter what route, there are a lot of resources out there. When they have
Agreed.
updates, they're pretty good. It just takes a little time to get a little familiar with it.
Yep. Agreed. But there are tons of resources out there to help learn. I don't think we've ever been in a situation where we've had more access to more information.
Yeah.
And I would also say just try some stuff, right?
Mhm.
That's been the best way that I've learned Facebook ads, is actually just getting out there and trying some stuff. And that to me is the most exciting part about something like advertising on Meta, and especially when we're talking about relatively targeted ads, is you don't have to invest a lot of money to learn. So even if you totally mess something up, it's $100. Like,
Yep.
it's a relatively nominal amount of money to get it to learn a very valuable lesson. So, that's a big thing that I would encourage people to do, is just give it a shot and see what you get. Start to understand the metrics that are coming in, and then you can adjust from there. But, we're really talking about pretty nominal numbers to learn some very valuable lessons.
Yep. And it'll only get better each time you try.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I tell my son that all the time. You only lose if you don't learn, right?
Yep.
So, make sure whatever you, even if it's a situation where it's not wildly successful, if you've learned something, it's good.
Love that.
I love that advice. And that is it as far as questions go. But again, if you didn't get a chance, please go ahead and fill out that survey. That will just help us, like Gabe said, pick out topics for the next installment of Broadband Banter. We're really looking forward to bringing some more of this valuable content to all of you. And we will also be sending out a follow-up email with the recording. And like we mentioned, it will also be posted on the Broadband Banter page, which will be linked in that email as well. So thank you, Gabe and Christina. This was excellent.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate everybody's time.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.